This is a Jack tale. This is the story of Jack the Master Thief. Very old story, very new story. Jack, when he was a young boy, showed lots of promise, as many young people do. When Jack became a teenager, 16, 17, 18, 19, as many teenagers do, all that promise just frittered away. It left in late slept-in mornings, forgetting chores, not caring about anything. Now, that would have been fine if Jack's parents were wealthy, say, barons or king and queen, but they weren't. They were simple people, good people, but not wealthy people. So there came a time for the talk. And the talk went like this. Jack, get out. That was Jack's father. He's not a man of many words. Jack's mother explained a little bit more. She said, son, you had so much promise. You haven't exactly fulfilled that promise that we expected of you, and now we can't feed you anymore. All you do is eat and sleep. We need you to go out into the world and find a job. And Jack shivered and went, job? Said, nah, it doesn't sound like me at all. But I promise you, Mother, I promise you that I will reward you for all you have done for me. And in the morning, he packed a small sack, a few clothes, his best coat, and off he went. Now, it was a dreary day, gray, cold, and the afternoon turned to rain. So by the time the sun was setting, Jack was truly miserable. And he was nowhere near a town yet because he hadn't been walking very fast either. But just as he had about given up and was going to crawl into a little hovel underneath a tree and pull his cloak over his head, he saw a little light. And sure enough, he came upon a little house. And when he banged on the door, this dreary old woman opened it and said, What? What do you want? Please, I just need a little something warm to eat and perhaps a bed to sleep in. Well, you won't get that here, she said. The masters won't allow it. Who are the masters of this house, if I may ask? Well, they're fine, upstanding young gentlemen who just happen to work until late into the night. Well, if they're not here, then I'm sure they won't mind if I have just a little food, please, and a warm bed. Well, fine then, but you'll pay for it one way or the other. And Jack said, oh, ma'am, I promise you I will return you exactly what you deserve. And he stepped in before she changed her mind. He managed to eke a little bit of warm soup out of her, and then just volunteered one of the 6 beds to be his own. Surprisingly, he slept well that night. Jack never had a problem sleeping well. When he woke in the morning, there were 6 grumpy faces staring at him. And the chief of them all said, Who are you? What are you doing here? You've taken my bed. Jack, for the first time in his life, had a thought. It was about time. He stretched languidly and sat up and said, I am the master thief. I've come to see if you all lot are any good. If you are, perhaps I'll take you on as apprentices, or chore masters, perhaps. What? Said the captain. I am the chief here. I decide what we steal and when. Jack said, we'll see about that. I propose a test. So after they'd had breakfast, because Jack insisted that they have a good breakfast, if he was going to get kicked out or beaten up, you might as well do it on a full stomach. He found himself on the edge of the field of the property, watching the forest road. It wasn't by accident that these 6 thieves had a house near where the road went into the forest for quite a few miles. Best pickings, you see. And they didn't have to wait long. The morning sun had come up. Jack said, of course, couldn't have been today I walked. But then a farmer, Farmer John, came down the road, and everybody went shh, hid behind the hedge, and they watched him lead a little sheep into the forest. And Jack turned to them all in his new haughty personality and said, Now, could any one of you steal that sheep from that farmer? And they all raised their hand. Oh, I could. Easy. He didn't look that strong. One blow. And Jack said, no. Could any one of you steal that sheep with no violence whatsoever? And all the hands went down. No, I don't think so, they said. Watch then and learn. Well, what do you need, they said, for tools and intimidation? Jack said, no, my shoes will do, thanks. Well, they didn't think this test was going to last very long, and Jack hied off through the woods. Well, he made his way up in front of where the farmer was leading his sheep, and at a bend in the road, he took off one shoe and dropped it right in the middle of the road, and then went back and hid in the ditch. The farmer came by and looked at the shoe as he went by. Well, that's odd and strange, but who has a use for one left shoe, nice as it is? Now, Jack went out, grabbed that left shoe, ran around in front of the farmer again, and threw his right shoe out in the middle of the road. The farmer came along and went, there's the pair. Wait a minute. I could have a brand new pair of shoes into this whole deal. And he quick tied up his sheep to a tree at the edge of the road, and he ran back to get the left one. Jack, of course, picked up his right shoe, untied the lamb, took it off. Easy as could be. Well, now, the thieves were a little too cool to be impressed. Outwardly, at least. So they said, nah, one test won't do. Maybe that was just luck. So they waited. Well, poor Farmer John, he needed the money from the market, so he had to go back and get another animal. So he went back and got his goat. Now, his wife Joan was not going to be happy about that, but they had to eat. So, sure enough, as the morning wore on, the thieves and Jack saw Farmer John leading a goat into the forest. And Jack said, now, how many of you can take the goat from him? All 6 hands raised up. Without any violence or beating or intimidation. All 6 hands went down. I don't think so, they said. I'll do it, said Jack. I'll show you who's the master thief. Well, what do you need for tools? What do you need for intimidation? Jack said, nah. Well, wait a minute. If you have a length of rope, that'd be great. So they brought him a big, long length of rope. Jack took the forest path and went on up ahead. Now, Jack had to think about this one a little bit. Farmer wasn't going to be so easily fooled. So he took the rope and he threw it over a tree branch and he tied it under his jacket, around his shoulders, once around his neck, and hauled himself up. So when Farmer John came around the corner, there was Jack. Said Farmer John, a hanging. It's been a while since I've seen one of those. And he skirted his way around the body and went down the path. Jack lowered himself down and quickly ran around and found another tree, looped it up, and hauled himself up. Farmer John came along and went, ooh, 2 hangings. That feller looks familiar. He went by. Once more, Jack came down, ran around, threw it over the branch, hauled himself up. By this time, Farmer John came around and went, triplets! Oh, this is horrible. I have to have been imagining it. I got to go look at the other 2 bodies. So he tied up his goat and ran back to look. Well, of course, there were no bodies. And Jack lowered himself down, took the goat, and went back to the house. Well, as he laid his story out, the thieves were quite impressed this time. Although they tried to play it cool, they really couldn't. But the chief would have none of it. He said, oh, this is all easy, tiny little small animals. Show us something impressive. And Farmer John helped along. You see, he still had a problem. No bread, nothing to eat. The only other animal that was close enough that he could get without his wife seeing him was the old cow in the far field. So, soon enough, the thieves and Jack saw Farmer John leading this big, slow old cow into the forest. And as before, Jack challenged them. Can you steal that cow from him? Can you? With no violence? No. Not without violence. Well, what do you need? Jack said, oh, come on. The shoes and the rope were just toys. I really need nothing. Nothing more than my native wit and intelligence. We'll see, said the chief of the thieves. And Jack went off ahead. Well, this time he thought and he thought and he thought. He said, native wit and intelligence is all well and good, but I need something. So when Farmer John was deep into the woods and he came around the corner, he stopped for a rest. And when he did, he heard off in the distance. Oh my God, that could be my lamb. And then a little farther on, that was a goat. I found them. They didn't get stolen. They just simply wandered away. And he heard it again, a little bit further away. So quick as a whit, he tied up his cow to a tree by the road and off into the woods he went. And the little bleating led him off deeper and deeper and deeper into the woods until it just a faint little off in the distance. Farmer John never found him. But was worse yet, when he came back to the road, the cow was gone. Now, I don't need to tell you now, no one pretended to not be impressed. His voice alone, native wit and intelligence, and they declared Jack master of thieves, and presented themselves as his apprentices, if he would only teach them, which Jack promised to do. Well, now a week later, life was pretty good. Jack was eating regularly. The thieves trusted him well and good as a friend and a master. Even the bitter old woman, well, she didn't like him, but he was good for business, so she fed him, but not well. But the thieves had shown Jack all around their property, their plans, all of the tools that they had, and a cave full of treasure, and another cave full of disguises. And Jack said, boy, you boys have been working really, really hard. And they agreed. And the next morning they came to Jack and they said, listen, master, what you said was true. We have been working very hard. And the fair's up in Warwick down the road. And if we could only have a day off, we promise to give you a day off whenever you'd like. Jack said, I don't know. You've got an awful lot of work to do. Oh, please, they said, just one day, just an afternoon. So Jack said, all right, off with you, boys. Oh, thank you, they said, and off they went. Now, once they were gone, the old woman's suspicion raised again. She said, what are you up to? Jack said, now, madam, I had to get them out of the house. She said, I thought so. He said, madam, have they ever given you anything for your efforts? Well, no. What? No gems? No jewels? Not even a tiny bag of coins with all that cave of treasure? No, she said, come to think of it, not a whit. Well, Jack said, that's why I sent them away. We're going to remedy that right now. And he took her off to the treasure cave. Oh, she was amazed and astounded and praised Jack in all the words that she knew, which was like 4 or 5. She ran her fingers through the gold. She was trying to pick a jewel. Meanwhile, Jack was filling up 2 bags. Just enough to carry. Tied a rope around him, slung him around his shoulder, slipped out of the door, closed it, and locked it. But he did leave the key in the lock. Cruel Jack, he is not. Off he went, picked up the cow, the goat, and the sheep, tied them together, and went back down the road. As he neared Farmer John's house, he tied one of the bags to the cow. And he came up and knocked on the door, said, Sir, madam, would these be your beasts? Oh, glory be, said Joan. Those are ours. That's our cow and goat and sheep. But that bag's not ours. We never had that. Well, Jack said, and he untied it and spilled it out on their table. I have no need of it. You better keep it. Well, they were so busy wondering at their fortune that they didn't question who he was or how he found the animals at all. Jack took the single bag and went home. And he knocked on the door, and his own mother answered. And he said, Madam, good day to you. And she said, Oh, good sir, what can we do for you? And he said, Ma, it's me. Oh, goodness. And he took that bag and he laid it in her hands and he said, I promised to return to you what was your due. And I am here, and this is for you. And that is the story of Jack the Master Thief. Thank you.